welcome to episode 4 of the Vegan Champion podcast. Today I sit down for a chat with Natasha and Luca, who are known as That Vegan Couple. These two are highly influential vegan lifestyle advocates and animal rights activists who are constantly putting out all kinds of awesome content on social media. Lots of interesting things in this conversation, including how they found veganism, what inspired them to get more active in terms of spreading the vegan message, and their thoughts on various forms of vegan activism. That's all coming up on this episode of the Vegan Champion podcast. How's it going, everybody? I'm Jason Fonger. I'm the host here at the Vegan Champion podcast. Here we are in episode 4, and I must say that I'm really stoked about this one for a couple of reasons. The first and most obvious reason is because it's a great conversation with two of my friends, Natasha and Luca, who are people that I really look up to because of how dedicated they are to doing everything they can for the vegan movement. And the second reason is because the quality of the audio and video of this show is definitely a big step up from the previous episodes. We recorded this one in a proper podcasting studio space. I think that while the quality of the conversations on this podcast is the most important thing, having high quality video and audio is also very important. So I'm pumped to be moving things along in the right direction. So Natasha and Luca were recently here in Chiang Mai for a couple of months. During that time, they were regular volunteers at the Cube of Truth events that I organize every couple of weeks. We talk about what these events are in the podcast, but to give a little context, these are street outreach events where we have traditionally used laptops to show people footage of where animal products come from, how they're produced, and we have conversations with people in order to get them thinking about their lifestyle choices. But recently, the owner of one of the vegan restaurants here in town donated 4 large TV screens, as well as the battery and inverter necessary to operate these screens so that we can show the footage on the TVs as opposed to showing it on the laptops, which really boosts the visual impact of the demonstration and takes it to another level. So I feel this is an appropriate episode to tell you guys about this awesome restaurant. Good Soul's Kitchen is a plant-based restaurant located in Chiang Mai, Thailand. Their ingredients are made in-house with no preservatives and are locally sourced. I highly suggest trying the fresh mango smoothie, which is made from homemade almond milk, and definitely get your hands on their delicious mushroom burger. It's their most popular item, and it's just amazing. It's so good. Honestly, everything I've had at this place has been delicious. So no matter what you eat here, I promise you will not be disappointed. Good Souls is Chiang Mai's top-rated plant-based restaurant on TripAdvisor, as not only is the food top-notch, it's also a great atmosphere and is an essential location in the old city. I'm really super impressed with this restaurant and incredibly grateful for their support of the Anonymous for the Voiceless vegan activism that goes on in the city. That's the Cube of Truth events that I was talking about before. Be sure to check this place out the next time you find yourself in Chiang Mai. All right, so let's jump into it, shall we? It was a pleasure to sit down with Natasha and Luca for this conversation. They are really awesome people, and I'm excited to share this exchange with you. I think you'll enjoy it. I think you'll find it interesting, thought-provoking, and hopefully inspiring. Here is That Vegan Couple. Natasha and Luca, welcome you guys to the podcast.
Thank you so much.
You're very welcome. It's a pleasure to be here, Jason. It was funny when you said Natasha, you looked at me, and then when you said Luca, you looked at Natasha.
I know. I was thinking when I did that too, and I was wondering why I did that. I'm just used to saying Natasha and Luca, and you happen to be here, and I'm like, so let's try that again. Actually, let's start one more time.
I thought it was funny.
No, that was
that
good.
was cool. You got to leave that
you
stuff in.
Okay,
You got to roll with it.
So now you have to leave in the bit that you said I'm going to edit out.
All right,
See
yeah.
how it's worked?
This is like no editing is the plan. So yeah.
Should we have a code word in case we really need to edit something out? And this is still going in, so I'm just totally taking over your role.
I don't know. Should we have a code
word?
What would the code word be?
Oatmeal.
Okay.
Oatmeal. All right.
If anyone says oatmeal, it's got to be cut.
Except that's a good thing, though. So why are we using a good word to describe a bad thing?
Fine, bacon.
Bacon.
Okay.
All right.
If anyone
Bacon it
says
is.
bacon, it means cut, change topic, or just,
right.
I don't know, jump ship.
Okay. All
right.
right. Sounds good. So we're here in Chiang Mai. It's the vegan festival starting up, like the Thai vegan festival starting
Yes.
up. Have you
Yeah.
guys seen all the food coming out in the 7-Elevens, or is that somewhere you frequent? You guys go to 7-Eleven? Is that somewhere you go to?
Well, we just came from 7-Eleven
Yeah.
actually to top up our mobile internet data. So
Do you guys eat there? You eat food from 7-Eleven here? Or?
We don't.
We
We used to
don't.
in the past. We used to
Okay.
get that coconut nectar syrup. We used to be addicted to that stuff.
Oh,
yeah.
And the
That stuff's
tamarind
amazing.
ivy juice. We used to love that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But that's been a couple of years now since we've been focusing more on whole foods.
Yeah.
Except lately, you've got us onto
Oh, yeah.
those. What do you call those things?
You're such a
I
bad
actually don't
influence,
know.
Jason.
I actually don't know what they're called. They're these Japanese.
They're like, it's like a patty. I don't know
Yeah.
what it's made of.
I don't know.
It's vegan, right?
Yes.
And they have a coconut one,
The taro one.
Yeah.
You got us onto the
You got us
taro.
onto the
So too.
taro. You
Yeah.
were right.
oh my
Yeah.
gosh.
Yeah.
So just for people listening, this is a sweet.
yeah.
It's a dessert. It's kind of stodgy.
Yeah,
It's like-
stodgy's a good
You know
word.
what? It's almost like a hot jam donut. I don't know if you do this. Do you have hot jam donuts in Canada?
I don't. We have donuts with jam in them.
Yeah, that.
Yeah,
Okay, so we
okay.
call them hot jam donuts.
Okay, all
So
right.
imagine that, but it's really dense. It's not like super gooey.
Yeah,
Right.
not fluffy.
And not
like a
fluffy.
donut.
No.
No.
And then they heat them up and they're just heaven. And so we'd never ever had this. I mean, we've been in Chiang Mai on and off for a long time. We run into you, Mr. Bad Influence, and he's like, "Oh, you got to try these things." And we're like, "Hey, why not? We got to try these things."
Well, the normal spot was
And
closed.
now we're addicted.
The normal low oil or no oil and like whole food. The great I'm Jay, right?
Yeah,
I'm Jay
Yeah.
that's
in
it.
Yeah.
In the basement floor of Maya.
Yeah,
Yeah.
run by Mai and Mink.
Yes. Yeah.
Beautiful brother and sister
Yeah.
combo.
But anyway, it was closed, and I saw you guys, and you guys were like, "Oh, it's closed. What are we gonna do?" So I'm like, "Well,
Yeah, but that's dessert. That's not a meal.
yeah, exactly."
So now, anyway, we're
Yeah.
addicted to these things. So that's where we go. Thanks very much,
Yeah.
Jason. But we don't really do 7-Eleven.
But yeah, if you do go, I mean, maybe you saw some of this stuff. It's not even officially started, but they're starting to stock with all of the. They're gonna have all kinds of stuff, but they've already
Yeah.
got all these noodles and like buns that have vegetarian stuff, because there's this 10-day vegetarian. They call it vegetarian. Really, J is closer to vegan. But it's like a 10-day festival here in Thailand. So there's going to be just loads of stuff all over the place.
Yeah.
You guys are really going to have to exercise restraint to stay on your whole foods, because I know you guys do most of your cooking at home, right?
Yeah.
We do. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
I do remember the festival from a couple of years back though, and we got a great pad thai, didn't we?
We did. I mean, Luca he made it more of a pad thai that we would want to eat rather than regular street food. So
By
he-
saying, take that out, take that out, take that out, take that.
the poor lady, she was freaking out. She's like, what is left besides noodles and just tamarind sauce, basically? But no, it was fantastic.
It was really
Once we
good.
got rid of all the nasty stuff, it was really, really good.
Yeah.
What we love about the J Festival is they put those funky little J stickers on everything that's vegan, including toilet paper. Have you seen that? They
I
stick
haven't
them-
seen that. I've seen it on like broccoli and stuff.
Yeah, like anything that doesn't involve an animal product, even if it's, obviously like not something that you're going to eat. Oh, it's vegan. So they just put those stickers on everything, which I think is super cool. I love
Yeah.
it.
And then you can take those stickers. I usually put one on my phone and just use the stickers for.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I've
Yeah,
seen them
just-
decorated all over Chiang Mai.
Yeah. Yeah. So
Did we have
it's-
one on a bicycle at one point?
I think so.
Yeah.
Yeah, on your bicycle, wherever, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, it's a good time of year in Thailand, because it's like a platform to start talking about veganism with Thai people. And so the next couple of weeks we're going to do the Dominion screening this
Yes.
Saturday.
Yeah.
I don't know if this will be posted by then, but we're early. What is it? October.
Early
4th.
October.
Early
Yeah, yeah,
October.
yeah.
I think it's the 4th,
It's
right?
the 4th.
And the screening's on the 6th.
The screening's on the 6th. This podcast will probably not be up. But anyways, just to say, like, leading into the festival, and then we're going to have Cube of Truth the next 2 Sundays for the, during the J Festival. And hopefully the timing is good to sort of get people thinking, because a lot of Thai people will eat vegan for 10 days of this festival. But the reality is 10 days out of the year is better than 0. But, what about the other, 355 days of the year? So it's a good sort of, way to start a conversation. Or
Absolutely. And of course, they're doing it for different reasons, aren't they? So
Yeah.
I don't know a lot about this festival, but I think there's an element of spirituality or religion, and it's like it's good karma for them. Is
Mer-
that right?
Yeah, merit.
Merit.
Yeah.
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 And I don't know all of the details, but you're right. It is like a religious
Yeah.
thing, but I think that the idea behind it being a religious thing is you're doing a good deed, right? So if you're doing a good deed for these 10 days,
Yeah.
why only do the good deed for these 10
Yeah,
days?
exactly.
Exactly.
That's the
Yeah.
question it begs.
Yeah. And who are you doing the good deed for?
Mm-hmm.
Like, what's the intention behind it? Is it for you personally, or is
Mm-hmm.
it, for the animals? Is it for the planet? Is it, because it's the right thing to do? Or is it just,
Mm-hmm.
hey, I got these 10 days, brownie points in my pocket kind of
Exactly.
thing, vegan brownie points.
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, but as you said, 10 days is better than nothing. And it does open the door for conversation, which is a great thing.
For sure. Actually, Wichaya Pat, who is one of the AV organizers from Bangkok, she's got a YouTube channel and she did a video on it recently, and it was in Thai. So my understanding of exactly what she was saying was limited, but I know she's going to add the English subtitles. But it's one thing for us to sort of speculate on this festival. It's another thing entirely for a Thai person to talk about it and to be essentially spreading that message that we're talking about. Like, it's something good to do for these 10 days. But why is it necessary to go back to harming animals, eating these animal products for the remainder of the year? So she was raising that question. So it's not just coming from us as Western vegans trying to impose whatever.
Exactly.
Because there are people who will say those kinds of things. They'll say,
yes. Yeah. Oh, we've heard them.
veganism's only for white privileged people, right?
Yeah, exactly. No, it's
Yeah.
so important to have Thai people talking about this, spreading this message, asking the questions, and communicating with other Thais in their own language, so they understand they're all on the same page. We're actually going up to Bangkok in a couple of weeks.
Or down.
Down, yeah, of course. Where are we? I don't know. Going down to Bangkok to see her name again.
Wichaya Pat.
Wichaya Pat.
Yeah.
So we're going to do our activism workshop down there. And what else are we doing? We're doing a Cube of
Cube
Truth.
of Truth, yeah. And we're trying to organise a Dominion screening there as well, aren't we?
Yeah, and so we're communicating with her right now. So again, it's just great to have Thais involved in this. I think the message has to come from them as well. And she did a vigil recently, right? They did a pig save vigil, and she made a video which was absolutely extraordinary to see. The first one in Thailand.
Yeah.
Absolutely fantastic video that she put together.
Didn't she do well?
Yeah. Really effective footage, and the way she put it together and narrated it was very, very effective and powerful.
Yeah, so it's really good to see. And that's the thing, like I think it has to come from Thais because you're talking about different culture, different language, different everything, different mindset. It's so important that the message comes from them,
Absolutely. Absolutely. Like, we can't just come over here as Westerners and expect Thai people to receive the message in the same way. It's just not that the message necessarily needs to change. The core of what the message is still going to be the same, but hearing it from somebody who is from the same country as you, speaks the same language as you, is grown up with the same values, has the same understanding, like, it's just it's a totally different thing.
Totally
in
different.
that way. So
yeah.
It is great to have down in Bangkok. I think it's half of the organizers of the AV chapter there are Thai. It's something that I'm working on here in Chiang Mai is to get more Thai people involved, because that's something that we are lacking a bit in our cubes here, is like Thai people speaking about veganism. I can try to speak with my limited Thai abilities, but that
you
only
do
goes
well.
so
You
I
do
had to-
really well,
I had
yeah.
to pull Jason in the other week. I was speaking to someone and I just, I don't have enough and pulled you in and you were able to take over the conversation. So you did well.
I can sort of convey like the basics, but when it comes into like philosophical discussions and stuff, like but I think it's one of the ways that I gauge how well I'm doing with Thai is by like how clearly I can express myself to somebody about veganism. Because that's one of the huge motivators for me to learn and study Thai, is so that I can, try to spread the message.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's good to see that things are moving in the right direction here in Thailand for sure. Like that first vigil that happened, I don't know, are they going to try to plan one for when you guys are there?
We asked, but apparently I don't think it can be brought together in such a short time frame.
Right.
So I think they want to set up something a little more official, and they might want to have some law enforcement there. Perhaps the law enforcement will be asked to stop the trucks on behalf of the activists so that it's safe. I think that's the intention. Obviously, that's represents the most ideal vigil situation. So I think that's what they're trying to bed down before they do their next one.
Yeah, I think the first one was just a bit of a trial run. It just sort of came together, but there wasn't a lot of structure, and they want to make sure it's super safe and maybe even have discussions with the slaughterhouse just so everyone's on the same page. So I don't think, well, they said they don't think that can be done by the time we go up in a couple of weeks, unfortunately. But long term, that's the aim. So good for them.
Yeah, either way, you guys going there, giving a workshop. You gave a workshop here in Chiang Mai, which was fantastic. That was a couple weeks ago now. Yeah. And you've given workshops. You've been on your tour and stuff, and I want to talk about that as well. But yeah, let's take it back a little bit. I want to ask you guys, to share your story a bit, because maybe somebody's listening to this, they don't know who you are. I want to know about you guys. Where do you come from? Who are you guys? Let's take it. If we could do individually before you guys met, give me sort of a compact version of, let's start with Luca. Who were you, Luca? Growing up before you met Natasha. Who are you? Where are you coming from? What's your story?
Well, I was raised eating animal products just like the majority of us, and I loved them. And just like everybody, who eats them loves them. No vegan ever goes vegan because they no longer like the taste of animal products. I would say I was a real animal product lover, and that's as far back as I can remember. And I don't know, grew up in a regular family, veganism, and we didn't hear the word until, when was it?
After we were vegetarian. We didn't even know what vegan was as vegetarians. So
I think it was 2011. The beginning of 2011 was the first time we heard the word vegan. So I was 31 at that stage. So I hadn't even heard the word for the first 3 decades of my life. Yeah, and just had a regular childhood, regular family.
We're very boring, Jason.
Where'd you grow up?
Melbourne, Australia.
Melbourne. So you grew up in Melbourne.
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
And what were you into as a kid? Like, what was your, what hobbies, things like that?
Yeah, sure. So I guess I started judo when I was about 7.
Okay.
I did that till age 11, and then I discovered basketball, and I really, really liked that. So I practiced basketball from, say, age 12 to age 21. And
you're going to tell them about your silly collections?
A lot of trading cards, so basketball trading cards. I grew up in the era of Michael Jordan and Magic Johnson, so that was the golden era of the NBA as far as I'm concerned anyway. I was into all the, figurines when I was younger, like Star Wars, Transformers, He-Man, Masters of the Universe, that type of thing. Phantom comics, real sort of geeky boy, I guess.
There you go. Nice. Yeah. But athletic as well.
Yeah, did the sports as well. That's it, I think. Then we met at age
10.
10.
So you didn't know that.
Although the way I said that, it sounds like we got together at age 10.
No.
No, we didn't get together at age 10.
So you guys do you grow up in the same neighborhood or?
Yeah, we were like 5-minute drive away from each other.
Oh, wow.
Because I moved to your area. Like I was living somewhere else in Melbourne, and then we moved when I was in grade 5.
Yeah, so you were 10.
Yeah, 10.
Or we were both 10. Yeah.
And so what were you like as a kid when you guys would have met for the first time? What kind of things were you into? Trading cards and basketball and stuff too?
Jason.
Or what
Actually,
were you?
You know what? I did start playing basketball.
There you go.
A couple of years later. Yeah, I did get into basketball. I was the what was the one at the top of the guard? Was it guard?
Guard, yeah. So
where they put the short people that play basketball.
Point guards,
yeah,
guards. Yeah.
I was one of those. I just kind of like jumped around a lot and threw my hands in the air. Wasn't very good at it. We met at age 10 because where we moved, my family moved, ended up being 5-minute drive away from each other.
But we met because we went to the same primary school.
Exactly. We're in the same class.
Wow.
Luca was very good with numbers. I'm not good with numbers. So come math class, I started, looking over his shoulder and he moved his hand away so I could cheat and copy his answers. And then I got busted and then they made me sit somewhere else. And so
wow. I didn't realize you guys went so far back. Yeah.
Way back.
Yeah, that's 1990. So what's that, 28 years ago, is it? Did I get that right?
Possibly. I feel very old now.
1990.
Yeah.
28 years, yeah.
Yeah. That's it. Then we went to separate high schools and...
My sisters went to your co-ed high school and we kind of exchanged messages through my sisters, didn't we?
In the old days.
In the sense that we kind of always, it's from sort of age 16.
Hold on. Go back to 10. He liked me in primary school, just so I get the record.
Yeah,
straight,
okay. I was
right?
wondering about that. Like,
Yeah.
was it just, okay.
And I always thought, he's too tall. No way. Maybe later on when I'm older and I grow up a little bit more and I'm taller like Luca. Well, that never happened, did it? But that's kind of, and the funny thing was actually back, I don't know if you did this in your high school, in your primary school, we would have like older mentors for the younger students. Did you ever do that kind of thing?
we had some sort of programs like that. Yeah.
And so Luca's start again. When we were in grade 5, so we were 10, your younger person that you would take care of was my brother, who was in like first level school. So there was a little connection there. I don't know. Did you pick that on purpose, or did he pick you, or did I tell him to pick you?
I can't remember the details, but it's quite amazing when you think about it, isn't it?
That's it. So, something happened there, whatever. The universe aligned us.
And then at age 16, we took part in Toastmasters International speaking competition. And that was hosted at my college.
Yeah.
And so you would come over on a weekly basis?
I think it was, at least weekly.
Right. And then
we were super geeks, right? We did public speaking competitions for fun.
Okay.
Right? And debating and stuff like that.
Hey, debating, that's coming in handy now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
In fact, you started debating at age 10 in primary school, I remember.
Yeah, that's right.
Right. So you've had it in you right from
I like to argue. Aren't you lucky?
Yeah. So she was always good at debating at age 10 and 11, and then great at public speaking from ages, 15, 16?
Yeah, thereabouts.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's definitely held her in good stead for outreach conversations
for sure
today. So.
Oh. Anyhow, so we did this competition. It was at your high school.
Yeah, and then I don't know, I was low on self-confidence at that time with the ladies. And so I sort of declined a very obvious advance by you, which I look back at now and think, oh, God.
What did that look like exactly?
So we had, this competition was kind of an amalgamation of the schools in the area. So I don't know, maybe 5 people from each of the schools coming together.
Yeah, that sounds about right.
Right? And we all had different roles to play during that time. And sometimes you'd have to step up and be like the lunch break server. So, just taking around there were biscuits. There was a tray of biscuits and some tea or whatever it was. And it was my turn to hold the tray, and I was going around and, I saw Luca over there and he was with his mates. And I went over with the tray and I said, "Would you like a biscuit?"
Which is kind of like the 16-year-old equivalent. Would you like to come up for coffee?
And you said no.
I know.
I'm like, what's wrong with you? I'm offering you a biscuit.
I know.
So
I still regret it to this day.
You didn't have to specifically offer the biscuits. You just had to walk around and sort of give
exactly. I was just holding the tray.
Whoever wanted them, right?
That's right.
Yeah,
but I
this
went
was a
over.
specific biscuit for you.
Correct.
That you declined.
A very strong implied inference there. And
then I ended up dating your friend as he took the biscuit, buddy. You passed up the biscuit.
Yeah, fair enough. No.
That's pretty funny. And then, so how did you guys eventually you did get together? So when did that happen? Was that a few years later? Or?
Yeah, it was on the eve of my 18th birthday.
Okay.
He didn't say no to the second round of biscuits.
No. Oh, yes.
Thankfully.
You learned learn the lesson.
I learned the lesson. And we were both at it was your best friend 18th birthday party, yeah?
Yeah.
And because I knew her as well, I was there. And that was it.
That's cool. And then, so you guys used to be yoga teachers and, doing other things other than all the vegan stuff that you're doing now. So, and I'm guessing when you were 18 and you first got together, you were not vegan. Now, I remember watching the video that you guys had on your channel with the BBC, and they had said like, so we've heard that veganism saved your marriage, and you guys are like, what?
I know.
But I remember seeing in a video somewhere that there was some kind of like an ultimatum. Is that correct?
Oh, yeah.
So I guess that in that sense, you could say that had you not, walk me through what that looked like, because I don't want to, say anything that's incorrect here. What did that look like exactly?
Unless you do a BBC.
So you were. I don't want to. I haven't been on the phone to BBC or anything. I'm not trying to. But I just think it's interesting because you were not vegan when you got together, and then you went vegetarian together. Like, what did that look like? That
all right.
evolution?
So we're talking about. Okay. So we knew each other since age 10.
Yeah.
We've been together for 20 years
Since age 18.
and we've been married for
14 of those 18.
14?
14 of those 20 years. Yeah.
Right. So we're talking big numbers here.
Yes.
Right? And we were like, where did the BBC get that?
Yeah.
And then we went back and we looked at our website, our About Us page, and we're like, you know what? I think we got to rewrite that, because maybe they just kind of took a few things from there and, came up with something. So we actually redid that page.
Oh, just because of that.
Just to make it
It's
clear.
not that anything was inaccurate, but we could start to see how maybe things could be misconstrued.
Yeah,
Right,
and just kind
right.
of piece together this line and that line. If you're not, we're detail people.
Yeah.
If you're not a details person,
And you're glossing over something, and you see a website called That Vegan Couple, and on the About page, we're talking about a
Making
quarter
big
life crisis
changes.
and making
Yeah.
changes. People could very easily think, oh, okay, maybe it was veganism that was the big change and that type of
which
thing.
it wasn't. All right, so let's just get that clear. We redid the About Us page.
Okay. All right.
So, all right. So we got married.
Yeah.
Age
And-
24.
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay.
And
Basically had a quarter life crisis. We were
Yeah.
working corporate jobs. I was in banking and Natasha was in corporate communications.
started with journalism, moved into corporate communications.
And yeah, we were just caught up in the whole, consumerism, wealth creation, all that kind of typical Western mindset. And we realized after a while of being on that mouse wheel that we were kind of miserable.
Yeah, we were. And when two people come together in a relationship, you're not whole just because you bring two halves together.
Right.
Each half needs to be whole or close to whole
For sure.
to make a third circle, if you like. And so we weren't whole as individuals, and we were very young. Very young. We hadn't just experienced stuff and life and worked stuff out. And then you put us together and everything's supposed to work perfectly. It doesn't happen like that, So yeah, a couple years in, things were just like, oh, we got to deal with this stuff. And eventually, yeah, as you said, there was an ultimatum, and we've spoken about this on our podcast show as well.
Yeah, we've got an episode on relationships where we talk about our relationship in
Yeah.
depth. And
It's our most popular episode because
Okay,
everybody
cool.
wants to know the juicy details. Give us the drama. Give us the gossip. What happened?
All right, so we can save all the details and stuff for that. But the gist of it was you basically
Yeah, I gave Luca an ultimatum. Yeah, I said, okay, we got to fix some stuff. We got to sort stuff out. You're either with me or I'm out of here. This is what I'm doing with my life. Are you coming or not?
and that ultimatum was about veganism or was it
No.
about something else? What was it about exactly?
Our marriage.
Okay.
I'm out the door, buddy. Let's get
Okay.
are we allowed to swear on this podcast?
Sure, yeah, whatever you want
Okay,
to say.
let's get our
Yeah.
shit together.
Yeah,
right? Or I'm out. So we didn't even know what the word vegan was. We weren't
Okay.
vegetarian. We're talking about 12 years ago now.
yeah, we're talking about 2007.
Okay.
So
I
what's
see,
that?
okay.
11.
11 years ago. Right?
See, I thought and this is maybe I don't know why, but I thought that was you saying I'm going vegan, either you're going vegan or I'm out.
No,
So that's not what it was.
Absolutely not.
Okay.
That was us just saying we got to sort our stuff out. We got to sort our marriage stuff out.
Okay.
Right?
The kind of stuff that most couples, and look, this is quite the generalization, but they probably just try to keep swept under the carpet for their entirety of their relationship, and maybe it blows up at age 50 with a midlife crisis or something like that.
Right.
Fortunately, we dealt with it at quarter life stage.
Yeah, and I think that's because we got together so young. So
and everything was quite fast tracked, wasn't
exactly.
it?
Our quarter life was the equivalent of someone's midlife. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, that was it. I just we needed to sort our stuff out. I wanted to travel. I wanted to experience. I wanted to just stop working so much and change our priorities and just live. I wanted to live.
Okay.
And you were obviously on board with that.
Yeah, well,
While he's here.
yeah, I valued our relationship more than the things that I was doing in the relationship that were harming the relationship. So it was just a conscious choice in that moment, given the ultimatum I was given. And I'm very glad that I made that choice. And yes, I am sitting here today a very happy man. And
I'm not kicking him under the table, I promise.
happy wife, happy life, as the how vegan web designer once said, didn't he?
I know.
You hated it when he said that,
I'm
didn't you?
like, mate, you're not making me happy right now.
Anyway, Jay, so what we did, we took a 12-month sabbatical.
Okay.
So we left the corporate gigs behind and we went and explored the world. And at the last 3 months of the 12-month sabbatical, we ended up in an ashram in India.
Okay.
An ashram is just a place where you practice yoga and meditation.
Had you already been practicing?
No.
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 Okay,
so
so
this
this
was
is
our
like
first foray into yoga.
Gotcha.
And
This was the first thing, like as a result of this, we need to change. Is this sort of the first place that you went to? Or
no, so there was a
eventually?
12 month sabbatical, the last 3 months of which were at this
Gotcha.
ashram in India. The first 9 months were more just your typical type of travel in
We were
Europe and
backpacking.
North America.
Okay.
And yeah. So anyway, we read this book, Eat, Pray, Love by Elizabeth Gilbert, #1 New York Times bestseller. And she talked about how she spent 12 months and split it up in 3 different countries. It was in Italy, India, and Indonesia.
Yeah.
Yeah. And her time in India, the 4 months there, she was also in an ashram. And that was the first time we'd heard about what an ashram was. And the experiences that she had there really resonated with us. And we're like, yeah, I think we think there's something in there for us.
Yeah, well, it was actually, I'm just thinking, but go back a little bit further. We were in Italy on a yoga retreat.
Okay.
And this was something that I was researching when we were back home in Melbourne having our little quarter life crisis. We were looking for something more, something deeper. There has to be more to life
The
than
materialism.
Exactly, right? And so what do you turn to? You turn to yoga because that's just what Westerners do when they're having some kind of crisis.
That's what happened to Elizabeth Gilbert.
Yeah. Well, we didn't read the book until much later. So anyway, I researched.
That's true.
Yeah, I researched this yoga retreat that was happening in Italy, in Tuscany. I'm like, wow, this is amazing because we were also what's the film called? Under the Tuscan Sun.
Yes.
Right. So at that point, we were like Italy obsessed, Europe obsessed, Tuscany obsessed. We loved everything about that. And so I found this yoga retreat that was happening in Tuscany. Everything aligned. We're like, yes, great, booked us in. We're going there. And this was within the first 3 months of that sabbatical.
That's right.
Right. Our yoga teacher at that retreat was an American woman, and everyone else in the retreat for that week were older than us.
Middle-aged.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
We were the odd ones out.
We really were.
I was the only guy.
Yeah. It was. Oh, it was so funny. You had no clue. It was really bad. Your big knees were kind of around your ears trying to sit down on the ground. It was very comical.
I think that's often the case in yoga, circles is you get a lot of females and
yeah. It's true.
It's a bit like veganism, actually.
Yeah.
Single guys out there, if you're not vegan and you haven't got a partner, what are you doing? You're crazy. True?
Well, yeah, that's what they say. That's what I've heard.
I'm just looking at the statistics. You're looking at basically, at most, I would say 70%, 30% male, 70% female. If not, it's an 80-20 split.
So go vegan and go to a yoga class, basically.
Yeah.
So anyhow, the yoga teacher pulls us aside at some point and she sits us down and she says, all right, you two, what's your story? And we're like, what? She says, what's your story? You don't fit in here. Everyone's older. You're a young couple. What are you doing here? What's the story?
Yeah.
And we're like, whoa, this is deep. She knows too much. And so then we told her our story. We told her the stuff we were going through, the problems we were having, the stuff we were working out. And she said, you have to read a book called Eat, Pray, Love. And we're like, all right. The yoga teacher said we have to read the book. Fine. So the next time we were at an airport, we went to the bookstore, picked it up. I read it first. And I didn't speak to her for the whole time whilst reading it. I'm like, I'm not going to say anything. I'm just going to read this book. I finished the book. I still didn't say anything. I said, you read it.
So I read it. And at the end of reading it, I turned to Natasha and I said, so we're going to India, right?
I'm like, yeah, baby, let's book.
But I was totally on board with it as well. I knew that we needed something, and that sounded really amazing, that her experience there for 4 months. So we got online and we looked, actually.
We emailed the yoga teacher from Tuscany, from India, from Italy.
Yeah.
And we said, we read the book and now we're going to go to India. And she's like, oh my God, you're actually doing it. What the hell's wrong with you?
But we had no idea what we were doing. And so we asked her for advice, can you recommend an ashram?
And she said, well, actually, a friend of mine just went to this place. So we were totally going by universe lead us. We were just like, have you seen that movie? I think it's called The Yes Man or something. They just say yes to everything.
Okay.
That's what we were like on that 12-month sabbatical. Anything that came our way, we're like, yep, let's do it. We bungee jumped. We went to an ashram. We did all kinds of stuff that we would, or that most people would sort of think, no, I've got reservations, or I don't know about that.
Which we had too at one point in our lives, but we knew things weren't working. So we thought, let's change it up. Let's do the opposite of everything.
That was the whole point.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So when the yoga teacher said, read this, we said yes. When, we said, okay, we need to go at an ashram. Where do we go? And she threw out a name at us. We said yes. And so we just went on that. And it was one of the best things we've ever done. She actually came and visited us in the ashram during that 3 months, remember?
Yeah, she did, yeah.
Yeah.
And I remember we knew we were going to be eating a vegetarian diet at the ashram. We'd already researched that on their website. And even the thought of that freaked us out because we were so animal product centric with our diets. And we thought, we're going to have do I have a protein deficiency or an iron deficiency?
I think we bought tablets with us, like multivitamins, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, we did. We had
Yeah.
multivitamins, and we also made sure that we stocked up on animal products, gorged ourselves on animal products before going into the
Oh, wow.
ashram, just so we get our protein and
And
iron
beer.
levels right up.
I remember we drank a lot of beer
Yeah.
right before. It was like beer and meat, let's get that into us because we're going to die without these two things for 3 months.
Yeah.
You know, how do you exist without meat and beer?
Yeah. So we get in there and we start feeling fatigued because, of course, we're only eating. They had 2
It's
buffet
probably
meals.
hungover.
Yeah, they really.
They had 2 buffet meals a day. So maybe calorie wise, we were probably eating less than we would when we had our 3 standard square meals.
Yeah.
But we didn't know anything about calories in, calories out at that point. And we put it down to a protein and iron deficiency. So we're walking around, mopey and grumpy and blaming it on the lack of animal protein and iron.
I mean, we were eating more chickpeas than we had ever had before in our lives.
Yeah, but
you
we
know,
knew
but
nothing about
nothing.
nutrition. We were just clueless. Anyway, we went in with the full intention of, look, if you didn't eat the vegetarian diet, you were out. So we knew what we were up for. And we said, okay, we can do it for 3 months. You can do anything for 3 months. But we fully intended to return to eating our standard diet of animal products once we left the ashram. 6 weeks into our stay, they screened a documentary film called Diet for a New America, based on the book by the same name by the author John Robbins, a family member of the Baskin and Robbins ice cream company, who actually turned his back on the family company because, he had basically...
He woke up.
Yeah.
He woke up. He saw what the industry that his family was involved in and the ramifications it was having for people's health, the lives of animals and the quality of the environment. And he's like, I can't participate in that anymore. Anyway, so basically the documentary talks about his story and everything he found on his journey to investigate the detrimental effects of animal products on health, animals and the environment. And at the end of the 59 minutes...
Well, the room was full of about, say, 300 people.
Oh, wow.
Right, so big hall. We had never seen anything like this before.
Nothing.
Nada. Just no clue. At the end of this film, most people were already vegetarian, mind you. So they all start clapping. They're applauding. We looked at each other and just thought, oh, F. Now we're going to have to be vegetarian.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we were angry for 2 reasons. The first was what you just said. Oh, damn it, we've got to be vegetarian now because we can't unknow what we've just seen. The second reason we were angry was, how come it's taken us until age 29 to see this for the first time? So they were the 2 sources of anger.
Yeah. And we went back to our room that night and we said, look, that it's just, there was a knowingness. It wasn't even a choice. It was just, we know it now. That's what we have to do. And never, ever did we ever think that we would come to that conclusion as we were going into the ashram. So that was the start.
So that was back in January 2009. Now, at that point, we still hadn't heard the word vegan, hadn't even heard of it. We weren't on social media. Even if we were, social media in 2009 wasn't what it is today from what we understand in 2018.
And just as an example, I remember when we went back home after that 12-month sabbatical, we were at my grandmother's house and she was cooking us up something and it was with eggs and cheese, I'm pretty sure. And I remember she said to me, I know you don't eat meat anymore, but you still eat like dairy products and eggs and you still eat those things. And I remember saying, yeah, of course, I can't give up those things. You know, I've that's going too extreme. You know, I've done enough by giving up meat. That I was one of those people, Jason. I said that because I didn't know. We didn't know about the dairy production. We didn't know about egg production. And we really thought that giving up meat was enough. That's all we needed to do.
For anyone who has watched the documentary film Diet for a New America, they might be thinking, oh, I'm pretty sure they touched on the dairy and egg industries. Now, they did, but there was an issue there in that they didn't use the word vegan. The ashram was only vegetarian. That was the first time we'd been in any kind of vegetarian environment. As I said, we still hadn't heard the word vegan. It wasn't in use back in then when they made that film in 1991. Obviously, the word existed, but it just wasn't as commonly used. And I think it was this whole, we only thought there were 2 ways of eating animal products or being vegetarian. We didn't realize there was this third option because the diet in the ashram wasn't vegetarian. No, this wasn't vegan. There was just it was like vegan didn't exist in our
In our
minds.
minds.
It was
And you
like
know
we
what
could only see, you stop eating meat, even though they've just shown you that dairy and eggs are not good. You know what I mean?
But I also think because we went into that situation totally unaware and not expecting it, it's like it came from left of center and it just smacked us.
Well, yeah.
And it was such a mind fire truck,
Yeah.
right? That we just couldn't comprehend anything more than this right now. It was just too much. Like
yeah.
our whole world was crumbling with the idea of not eating meat again.
But
Yeah.
and it wasn't like we were blocking veganism as a viable option.
We just
it was
didn't
as
know
if
it
we
was
didn't
a
know it was a
viable
viable
option.
option.
No, I
Yeah.
get it.
Does that
Yeah.
make sense?
Yeah, I get it. And I think also it's just like to think like, oh, I'm going to go vegetarian, I'm going to stop eating meat. That's like, I mean, for you guys then and for a lot of people now, like that's a lot.
Oh, we
And,
thought that was everything. Yeah.
and so even it's almost like, well, I'm not even ready to maybe think about giving up cheese or eggs. And a lot of people are in that position. Like when I talk to them, like, oh, well, I could see myself giving up meat, and then they're already being hard pressed just to say that. But I don't know. I can't give up my cheese and my
Yeah.
dairy and stuff. So
What was so weird was that the reason we went vegetarian after watching that documentary was because we're like, okay, so meat is killing and killing is unethical when it's needless. But for some reason, our minds couldn't make the same connection with dairy and eggs.
I just think it wasn't. You look 2 years later, or
Yeah,
2.5 years.
yeah. So what was it that
Yeah.
took you that next step?
Gary
then?
Yourofsky.
Yeah. Okay.
Someone needed to just spell it out super clear. And I think
Yeah.
this has had such an impact on us now as activists and how we communicate on our channel and in our activism. We're very, very clear with the information, that we don't beat around the bush and kind of leave it up to people to piece things together. This is vegetarian. This is vegan. This is why dairy and eggs are unethical and still causing, just as much harm, if not more harm, than the meat production.
They're the same
suffering
industries,
Exactly, they're the same. The suffering is prolonged. So we're very clear because that's exactly what Gary did for us.
This is why definitions and terms and words matter. So if they'd used those definitions, words and terms in Diet for a New America back in 1991, we would have got it. But because
Or at least known that it was an option.
and we didn't know that was January 2009. It wasn't until January 2011 when we were working at a yoga retreat. Well, it was a detox center where we were the yoga teachers in Thailand. And somebody came to the retreat center and we were having a chat, and they said they were a raw vegan. That was the very first time we'd heard the word vegan. So 2 years after watching this documentary.
And a raw vegan at that. We're like, where
Wow.
planet
Yeah.
do you come from?
because we still weren't on social media
No.
back then. We were still avoiding it because we thought it was like Facebook was like
evil.
Stalker Book, and it was the CIA's monitoring tool, and apparently they were able to, slash their workforce in half because everyone was keeping tabs on each other. And
It's probably true, but hey, now we're on it. We got to use it to our advantage, right?
Exactly.
And it was 6 months, or it was about 8 months after meeting that raw vegan that we watched Gary Yourofsky's best speech ever on YouTube. It was our first time on social media, using social media, watching some other vegan video that another guest at the retreat center had said, hey, you should check out this. She was vegetarian.
Vegetarian.
Right. And so we're watching that and we're thinking, okay, well, it's like about veganism. And then down the recommended panel on the side, there was Gary Yourofsky's best speech you'll ever hear. And we're like, wow, okay, with a title like that, you have to click on it at least.
Yeah.
And then we're like, an hour? Oh, no way we're giving this guy an hour of our time. We'll give him 10 minutes tops and then we're moving on. An hour later, we were vegan.
Yeah.
Yeah. And again, the same thing happened like when we went vegetarian. There was a knowingness. We looked at each other at the end of Gary's speech and we said, well, now we're vegan. Tears crying, flowing. Yeah. The cat comes in, as you do in Thailand. There's always a cat that comes in through the restaurant. Cat comes in right towards my leg. I'm terrified of cats. Cats don't like me. All of a sudden, this cat's coming towards me. I'm crying. The cat's sensing it, rubs himself on my leg. I'm touching the cat for the first time in my life, saying that I'm sorry. It was such a moment. And And that was it. So long story short, no, we didn't nearly divorce because of veganism. What's that, 20 minutes later?
No, it's good. It's good to have context, and it's interesting to hear everybody and everybody's journey. Not everybody goes vegan overnight. It sounds like you guys sort of had those two steps. It was like you essentially went vegetarian overnight, and then went vegan overnight after that.
Yeah, and the reason we went into such detail about the specifics of our particular story is because if you're on social media today, it's a lot clearer about the difference between veganism and vegetarianism. And it's a lot harder to plead ignorance that you didn't know about veganism. Everyone's got a vegan family member, friend, colleague who's they're following on Facebook and they're posting something. Yeah. So in 2018, a lot harder to plead ignorance than 2009, 2011.
Exactly.
And you guys are a big part of that on YouTube. I mean, there's a lot of your videos are popping up all the time, and you're doing lots of videos now. So how did that start? I mean, you saw Gary's speech, and then what was it that made you guys? Because it was 4 years ago or so, 4 or 5 years ago, you guys started YouTube. Was something like that?
Yeah, it's April 14, 2014. So 4.5. Yeah.
So what was the inspiration for that? Like, what made you guys want to get onto YouTube?
Well, what happened was after we saw Gary's speech, I mean, we were yoga teachers at that point. So, by the way, once we finished from the ashram, we continued our yoga practice.
Okay.
And we did so many things in the next couple of years. And one of them was to become yoga teachers. So we went from, just had no clue whatsoever what we were doing on the mat to it just helped us so much. It's a beautiful practice. It really changed our lives. And we became very passionate about this. And so then we said, we want to become yoga teachers. So we did our yoga teacher training. And again, Luca was the only guy on the training course.
Yeah, and I think at the retreat in Italy that you were talking about earlier, that yoga holiday, there was only 15 people. So I was one male in 15. But at the yoga teacher training, it was 1 in 30, I remember. So, yeah.
Poor thing. We survived. And then we were yoga teachers, and that was great. And so we did more travel, we did more teaching and experience things, and we did lots of different jobs in between, blah, blah, blah. We ended up, we were running vegan yoga retreats. So we would take people. So
you were incorporating it. Yeah.
Exactly. We would take people, basically for like a week-long holiday with us in, say, Bali, for example. And we would do yoga, but we'd also teach them about veganism. We'd give presentations about the ethics and the health and the environment. We'd screen films. We just veganize them for a week, right?
Yeah. Well, I mean, they really should go hand in hand. I mean, when you hear
that's right, people
like yoga is not just stretching, and there's more to it, and all of that stuff that does go deeper than the stretching. It really, I mean, it's pretty hard. I think, I mean, maybe people will disagree, but I don't know how you can really be living by a lot of the teachings of yoga and still be contributing to these industries.
You're spot on, Jason. In fact, the ethical foundation of yoga is ahimsa, meaning non-harming or non-violence. So you are not practicing yoga if you are not vegan. It's actually quite as simple as that if you want to cut right down to it. And it was infuriating for us as vegan yoga teachers to work in an industry, and it is an industry, whereby so many people were spouting peace and spirituality and all of that stuff, but not actually living a vegan lifestyle. There were very, very few and far between vegan yoga practitioners, and it used to just do our heads in all the time, didn't it?
Yeah. So anyhow, we were doing these vegan yoga retreats, and they were great, but it was a lot of work to put into it, maybe 6 months organizing for a 1 week retreat. We would cap them at, say, 15 was our maximum because we wanted to keep it quite intimate. And although it was a great week, we started thinking, geez, we're not reaching enough people and it's taking too long.
Because ultimately it's a numbers game.
Yeah.
Of those 15 people, it's always going to be the same small percentage of people that will actually ultimately go on to adopt a vegan lifestyle. So if your number that you're dealing with is only 15, it's going to take forever to veganize the world that way.
And a lot of people that were coming along were already vegan, and they just wanted a great week of being in a vegan-friendly environment on their holiday, which was also great. They were learning about health and nutrition, and that's great.
But you're starting to think, like, how do we
get this bit bigger? And so what we noticed, because we still weren't on social media then, right? We didn't even have a smartphone.
We got our first smartphone. It was a second-hand one in 2014.
It's embarrassing. But that's just,
It is what it is.
Well, we saw everybody were on these devices, these
Yeah.
phones, right? And so they're all looking at these things and they're all scrolling and they're looking at something. And we said, everyone's on these damn devices. We got to get on that because they're watching something, so they might as well be watching us
Yeah.
talking about veganism.
Yeah.
And that's when we realized, all right, we don't like it, but you got to be in it to change it. So get on social media and
Yeah.
use it for good instead of evil.
Yeah, for sure. For sure.
And now we live our lives on social media.
Yeah.
You know, and yet if the world were to go vegan tomorrow, we'd be off it straight away.
Yeah.
But we do what needs to be done.
Yeah.
Because
And-
it's the most effective way to reach the largest amount of people in the most easiest way. You know,
For sure.
So that's why we do it. That's why we got on. You know, you have one conversation with somebody, that's fantastic, but you're reaching one person. You make a video about that conversation, you put it online, you're reaching hundreds or thousands or hundreds of thousands, potentially millions of people. That's priceless.
Absolutely. I had a look back before we met today, and I was looking at I did the videos oldest to newest.
Oh,
no, you're
geez, that's
banned.
embarrassing.
Banned from
we
doing
should
that.
somehow get that feature turned off on our channel.
It's so embarrassing.
I just it's just because I wanted to see, because I know you guys now, your videos, you do tons of outreach videos. Like there's so many great conversations that, like you say, like you can go to a Cube of Truth, have an outreach conversation with somebody. It could be a great conversation. That person may go vegan or maybe not, but if you put that conversation on social media, potentially hundreds of thousands or millions of people see that conversation, and it has such a wider reach. But you weren't always doing those kinds of videos when it first started out. Those first videos, lifestyle, yoga was still very much, a part of what you guys were doing then. And there's been an evolution of sorts over the years. So has there been, I guess, sort of what has inspired this change, this move to more activism? You're doing response videos now, responding to people, these activism, like going out, having outreach conversations. What is it that has, because there still are people doing videos like you guys used to do, where it's more like more recipes and sort of what's the word, sort of
Lifestyle.
lifestyle. So for you guys, what is the motivation for that sort of direction change?
So there were a few different things that happened over the last 4.5 years. When we started to do response videos to other larger YouTubers, that's when the channel really started to grow. We started to, and that's the whole intention, is to tap into other YouTubers, larger audiences, bring the message to them. You have to be proactive. So we can't wait for someone to go, oh, I'm thinking about veganism. I might just go and do a search for a recipe. That's great. But we as vegans have to be proactive and quote unquote force the message into people's feeds, because it's a very competitive industry. And I'm talking about YouTube here. There are how many videos uploaded?
An insane number.
It's ridiculous, a number of
Every minute.
Yeah. So what we started to do was, all right, let's tap into other people's large audience. So we started to do response videos.
And I think that was around 12 to 18 months into the channel.
Okay.
That's when they started. We've got over 160 response videos now on the channel, and I think they started 12 to 18 months into it.
And so that was definitely a big shift in the channel and drawing new people to the message. That was fantastic. And then after a while, I mean, we had done, I don't know how many at that point, and then we just went, you know what, we need a bit of a break from this as well. We got sick of them because we're saying the same thing. And that's the thing, it's the same message every single time. I'm under eating. Oh, I don't feel good on a vegan diet, or oh, I'm going to do low carb or whatever. It's the same thing, calorie restriction and low carb and
Or
weight
you
loss.
can love animals and eat them too. That's another common
Yes.
theme.
Yeah.
So we did so many of them, and then it got to a point, Jason, we're just like, you know what, I can't make one more damn response video. Just stop it. And
But you're still making
We're
them.
still
I
making
know,
them.
we're still making them.
We have more variety now.
Yeah. And so in terms of more of the street activism, that came into play because of two things. First of all, the three main movements that are taking off at the moment. So you've got Anonymous for the Voiceless with their Cubes of Truth, the Save movement with their vigils, and Direct Action Everywhere. They weren't what they are now back when we first started the channel.
In fact, Anonymous for the Voiceless only started in April of 2016.
Yeah.
We started the channel 2 years prior to that.
Yeah.
So the street activism wasn't even on the sort of global radar at that point. I mean, people have been doing it for decades, of course,
Yeah.
but the popularity of it is obviously grown exponentially in the last 2 years, thanks largely to Anonymous for the Voiceless.
And then the other thing was we were traveling a lot. We were spending a lot of time in Thailand where those things weren't set up. So I know we've got the cube now.
But that didn't get here till November 2016.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So eventually we ended up back in Australia. And then that's when we had access to joining these groups and doing this kind of street activism, more traditional activism. And
Which was November 2017.
Yeah. And so that's when we were able to put that on the channel. So it's, your channel evolves with you and your lifestyle and where you're at and where you're living and what you're doing is going to be reflected through your content. So when something changes in our world, then you're going to see that on the channel as well. It's
crazy to think that it's only been just, 2.5 years or whatever that Anonymous for the Voiceless has been around. It's crazy. Just all the stuff that's happened in the past 2 years.
Over 700 chapters across around 60 different countries in just over 2 years. That's amazing. 2.5 years, yeah.
It
Incredible.
You've had some really great conversations too, like at those cubes. There was one conversation where you sort of broke down crying at the end of it. You were talking to this guy.
Yeah.
What was it? I mean, I'll put a link to that conversation if somebody wants to watch it. It's a great conversation, but I think you said you've never cried before during an outreach conversation. So what was it about that person you were talking to or about that conversation that led you to tears?
Well, there were a few other factors that didn't come through in that video, which obviously I can talk to you about now. So we were doing a US activism tour earlier this year, and that conversation happened in Portland. And that was halfway through the 3-month tour.
That's right.
And the tour was really intense. It was exhaustingly intensive.
Just to give you an idea for the listeners who haven't heard anything about it, basically we would fly in somewhere first thing in the morning, and then that evening we would have a meet-up at a vegan eatery, and we'd meet, greet and eat for an hour and a half, and then we would give a hour and a half activism workshop, and then we'd have Q&A for half an hour. And then the next morning might be an early morning Save Movement vigil. It could be 4 a.m., so we might have to be up at 3. And then the next day might be a Cube of Truth. The following day might be a DXE disruption. And then we're off to the next city to do it all over again. 16 cities in just under 3 months. So it was quite intense.
Just go.
It was go.
And a lot of time and energy planning that, just to coordinate. We could have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. You could be talking about up to 5 people in each city that we're liaising with to organize. You've got your host, your drivers, it was super, super intense.
Times that by 16 cities, and it was all. And so your point, halfway through, we're kind of like, oh, okay, this is pretty intense,
right? And you're tired, and when you're tired, you start to get emotional as well. You're getting worn down, and we were obviously doing a lot of street activism, a lot of conversations.
So you're talking to people
nonstop. And, at some point I was like, Luca, I don't want to speak to anybody about veganism again. I need just to put my head in a bucket for a week and not hear or listen or say anything.
I get that feeling too. I mean, after you've had a few conversations, it's funny. Sometimes I go to a Cube of Truth and it seems every conversation is great.
Yeah.
Other nights you go and just every conversation, nobody gets it.
Yeah.
And so, you get that feeling where you're talking to so many people and it's like nobody cares. Like,
yeah, it can get exhausting. It gets emotional when you're not sleeping right. You're feeling things more intense if you're not eating right. You're on the road, so not all of our meals were as clean and healthy as we usually are.
I can't imagine how much that would.
It all affects your body and then your emotions and how you respond to things. And so that
night in Portland, we were actually going to make a video and call it the Walkaway episode or something like that, because all of the conversations practically that Natasha had leading up to this one conversation that you've referred to, Jason, where the guy and Natasha cry, people were not open to hearing about veganism at all. Like they're literally walking off on Natasha, one after the other. It was just one of those weird, energetic nights.
Well, it was super strange because it's Portland, Oregon, and Portland is supposed to be this super, vegan haven. Yeah. It's really progressive, and we're thinking, this is going to be a great night.
There are over 100% vegan restaurants in Portland
Yeah, so it really threw us.
Insane.
And it is. And one of the locals said, no, you'd think it would be progressive and people are really open, but it's actually, they're a tougher crowd because they're all about the organic and free range and we're going to do it better. So it's kind of like trying to talk to yoga teachers or yoga students
who are already vegetarian and think they're doing enough because they're all spiritual and what have you. They're almost harder to break through than the hardcore carnist.
Right. So we're not talking about a hardcore carnist environment, but they were just super tough and not interested. And so halfway through the tour and then halfway through this night of outreach in Portland, and I was just like, this is insane. I've never had so many rejections. I can't even get a full sentence out before people are walking away. No one would take the card. One lady nearly had a nervous breakdown. I'm like, I can't watch it. Oh, she's freaking out. I'm like, whoa, chill. And then this guy comes along and I'm like, oh, thank God, someone's going to listen. So it was just like the cumulative total of everything I've just described.
It's kind of like the perfect storm.
Yeah. Yeah. And then he was open. I mean, he still asked questions, you know, he was resistant, but he was there. Like he had 99 points in his little
100-point system.
Yeah. And he just needed that little bit extra to tip him over. He was there. He was open. And to see his mind make the connection, when he made that connection that what we do to animals, we've also done to humans, his words, not mine, I'm like, oh, this is beautiful. Mm-hmm. It was like just a history being made right there for this man's life, just right there in front of us. And what was perfect was the song that was being played in the Cube was the song that's used in the Dominion film trailer, which I can't remember the name or who it's by, but it's
a great song.
It's incredible. And so that was playing at the same time, which is so stirring. And there's the part in the song where it's just like a little climax before it explodes into I won't sing. And that was the exact perfect timing when this guy, boom, made the connection. And it was like, wow, the universe is working in our favor tonight for the ultimate outreach scenario.
It was like watching Keanu Reeves' character Neo in The Matrix learn about the reality that he'd been living in that moment. Yeah. You know, it was all... Why
do my eyes hurt? Because you've never used them before.
Yeah.
It was that kind of thing. He was waking up in front of me. It was like I was watching him be, birthed. It was a birthing, a rebirthing. It was special.
What I found amazing about that conversation was how much, like you said, he was saying things that outreachers, vegans will often say.
Yeah.
I remember he said, this is the kind of thing we're going to look back on however many years in the future, and we're going to think like,
what did we do?
What were we doing? Why are we doing this to these animals? And that's him making that connection. That's not you saying, don't you think?
And so many comments I received on that video, both on YouTube and I've seen on Facebook, because one of the large vegan pages shared it and it's had, I think, over 600,000 views. Again, the power of social media. One conversation with one person, it's reaching a lot of people. And so many of the comments were, this is staged. He's a paid actor. Be honest with your outreach. And I'm like,
you would almost think that. Like it went so well.
But as in you couldn't pay for this. You couldn't make this up. It was just incredible. So, but obviously we didn't pay him. It was a real person, and we tried to find him. Actually, we were trying to.
We
Google
stalker booked him. Couldn't find him.
He hasn't reached out to you or anything.
He hasn't. No. We didn't exchange details, so.
I was hoping someone would.
It'd be easier for him to find us, obviously.
Yeah.
But
you'd think someone in Portland would have seen it and said, "Hey, have you seen this video about?"
I bet he'll find it eventually.
I hope so.
Yeah.
Because I'd love to do a follow-up, video with him.
Yeah.
To see where he's at. How'd he go?
Because he touched so many people, not just you, but the hundreds of thousands that have seen it.
The messages that we've been getting since that happened is just. There's almost something every day or every second day in our inbox saying, that conversation with that guy.
Yeah. Oh, it's fantastic. Like you say, it's like you would think that it was staged because it's just so perfect, right?
Yeah.
So those conversations are really powerful when you get, especially because I'm sure you guys film so many conversations. They're not all gold like that. They don't all get published, but the ones that do, it's worth it. It's worth it to have that camera on.
Just on that, Jason, we figured roundabout it might have been a 1 in 160.
Is that what it
type
would be?
Conversation? Yeah.
Luca actually try to work it out.
Yeah.
So you're filming about 160 times. You'll get one that you'll post.
No. That quality of conversation.
Quality.
That quality.
Okay. How many do you think you post out of the ones that you film? What percentage?
One per. Well, not even one per cube.
It depends.
It does depend.
Sometimes you can get one per cube, like as in one really quality conversation. But if you don't get one quality one, what we might do is piece together a montage of several conversations from that cube, because there may be good bits out of 4, 5, 6 conversations that you can piece together and tell a little story that you see the progression of several people. So you can always get something out of the cube, but something that's video worthy, as we say, in and of itself, doesn't always happen.
Yeah. And I guess one thing I want to ask you guys about, because when you're at the Cube of Truth, you're talking to people you've never met them before. They're coming up. It's a very specific scenario. They're there because they've seen what's going on. They're interested. They're showing interest. I mean, at these cubes, we're targeting, or we're pre-screening who we talk to, because we want to talk to people who are interested in the footage, right?
Yeah.
What about talking to family, people you live with, talking with people who are not vegan but you're really close with? How do you change your approach, or do you change your approach when you're talking to someone like that?
Absolutely. When it comes to family, there are complicated interpersonal dynamics. And what I mean by that is you each know how to press each other's buttons because you've been doing it since day dot,
that scene in The Simpsons?
Oh, yes.
Do you remember that Simpsons episode where they're doing an experiment on the family and they're all sitting in the room and everybody's got a buzzer to electrocute the other?
Give each other electric shocks.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
That's exactly what we do as families. So just picture that in your mind, and then you throw veganism into the mix.
And what happens quite often is that because of those pre-existing interpersonal relationship dynamics in the family members can automatically block the message because of the messenger. And yet if they were to hear that exact same message from a complete stranger, they might be open to it. So that's where the difficulty lies. It's a very difficult territory to navigate. We've got some tools that we can recommend people watch to help them with that. We've got some podcast episodes with vegan psychologist Dr. Melanie Joy and Dr. Claire Mann. So if people check those out, they go into a lot of tips and tools on things that vegans can use to help them navigate those tricky family situations.
I guess you can't just say this is what you should do, because of the dynamics are so different, right? Every single person's different. The relationship I have with my mom or dad is going to be totally different than someone else, right?
Go on.
No, go on.
I was going to say, more often than not, with the parents, typically it's difficult to receive the information from their kids because they've been the guardian, the mentor, the one with the greater knowledge base and what have you. And it's almost like they would be somehow admitting to themselves that they did something wrong in raising their children. And that would be a very difficult thing, I would imagine, as a parent to accept, even though the vegan child, and sometimes it's the other way around, but most often it's the vegan child, even though they would probably in no way, shape or form be blaming their parent because they understand that, we've all been duped.
For sure, yeah.
And their parents were doing the best that they thought
absolutely
to do. So,
yeah, I was going to say we had just as an example, we had a mother and daughter come to our activism workshop in.
Which one are you thinking?
Remember which one in the States?
There's a couple.
It doesn't matter actually. Whatever, one city along the way.
Yeah.
And the daughter said she's a fan and been following for ages, and she said, I've been talking to my mum for a long time, and she's kind of close, but I just can't break through to her.
There was one in Michigan and one in Chicago. I'm not sure which one it was.
It wasn't Michigan.
That was Chicago.
It must have been
then.
Chicago.
Yeah.
And but Mum stayed. She came to the meetup and met Mum. That was all lovely, and she stayed for the whole activism workshop. And the next day, the daughter messaged and said, "You did it. After all the years that I've been talking to my mum, you broke through." She said she's going vegan as a result. So it's the same message. It's just delivered from a total stranger without any emotional attachment, no strings attached, no filter of, oh, you said this to me back in whenever and you did this and whatever. It's just the pure message from a total stranger. Boom, we got it. Hole in one. Same message delivered by someone that you know that you're attached to and that comes with all this baggage. Forget it. That's been our experience. That's most people's experience. I feel like that family members don't even hear the message, the vegan message, because of all of this other stuff.
So vegans could actually take heed of what we're talking about here, because a lot of vegans get frustrated with being unable to break through to their family and their loved ones. They can look at this as a half glass full And the opportunity exists for them to get out there, knowing that this is how it tends to work with human psychology, and have outreach conversations with complete strangers at a Cube of Truth. And the success that you'll have there in those conversations will likely be a lot greater than you're probably having with your family. And they will help offset the frustration that you feel about your inability to break through to your family members.
And I wish we could start again, because when we went vegan, as we said, we didn't, Cube of Truths weren't around back then, and we didn't have experience with outreaching and how to speak to someone. And we were influenced by Gary. Gary's, boom, he just says it as it is. He's
face,
straight
yeah.
in, exactly. He punches you between the eyes, and we're like, yeah, Gary, punch us again. That was awesome. Right? So we needed that, but it's not everybody's cup of tea.
No.
And so we went about activism or communication, I should say, very much Gary's style. And that's super cool. That's fine. But sometimes you need to be a bit more strategic.
With people close to you?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, for example, this was so bad. I wish we could just turn back the clock. I wish we could start again and know what we know now and be the way we are now. Hindsight, it's a wonderful thing. We were with my parents one time.
We were in Spain. It was a month before we watched Gary's speech. So we were almost vegan in our diet and almost there in the mentality, but we just needed Gary to smack us between the eyes a month later. Anyway, so we're on this holiday with your parents, and your dad says, what's wrong with eggs? And I snapped, and I just said, well, what do you think?
I know.
And
that.
Yeah. That was...
and the conversation, obviously, no one said anything, and
it was just awkward silence, uncomfortable.
Oh, really?
It was terrible. This was...
So you really sort of snapped back at him? Or?
Yeah, I did.
Wow.
I was, again, it was 1 month before actually going vegan myself. And I was probably coming from a place of, I don't know how to articulate that properly yet. And so I'm just going to snap at you. Or maybe I did know, and I just had this, angry vegan stage, even though I wasn't yet vegan.
Vegan.
It was weird.
It was weird.
But that was the beginning of
The end of the
several
conversations.
types of those kinds of interactions early on in our vegan journey.
It was just
yeah?
silly. It was our fault. It was we but yeah, we just, like I said, hindsight's wonderful. So any advice that we could give people now is don't do that. Don't snap. Don't go to your family straight away with, you should be doing this. Just chill about it. Take a few breaths. Think about it. Definitely go to Cubes and do some practice on total strangers.
Yeah,
that's a great way to, upskill yourself.
I had a talk with, we did a video, Paul Bashir and I, and we were talking about how therapeutic it is to go to these Cubes.
Oh, yeah.
Because especially people who are newly vegan, you just find out about this stuff and you just want to talk about it. And if the people you're talking to, like you've been saying, are your close family, your close friends, people you already have these relationships with, there's already
baggage.
There's baggage, and there's gonna be, you're gonna have such a hard, you're not gonna be as successful, like to put it bluntly, but you still want to talk about it. So go to a Cube, talk about it with complete strangers, vent, and then maybe when you get back with your family or your friends or whoever, you've got it out of your system.
Great strategy.
I always think that, the people you're close, the closer you are to somebody, the less you should be talking about veganism. And the other thing is too, they see how you're living. It's like, you're the example. Like if you're the only vegan in your family, you don't have to say anything. You just have to be vegan. And that's like, they'll see that, whereas somebody on the street, you walk by somebody on the street, unless you've got a vegan shirt on or whatever, you're not getting anything out there. So you don't really need to work as hard with your close friends and family, I would say.
I would say still say something, but just change the way you say it.
Yeah.
I would still say something.
I guess I don't mean say nothing. I guess I just mean.
But your example is still very strong because they're there, they're watching you, they're living with you. Yeah, rather than someone on the street that, is obviously not living with you and can see your movements and your changes. Yeah, you're right. It's a bit of a combination of both.
Yeah.
And I just think that right now in 2018, going vegan and becoming active and a good communicator has never been easier. I mean, I don't want to turn back time because I don't want to be 18 again, but if I was 18 right now, my gosh, life would just be so different. I just pulled that number because it's super young, right? Just to start fresh, you've got all the information at your fingertips, so easy. You've got every recipe imaginable on YouTube. You have all of this activism at your fingertips, how to communicate, as you said, the Cube, just everything is so much easier now, even compared to just us 7 years ago. It's a totally different world. So yeah, I'm blown away by the changes that we've seen in our short 7 years, which is nothing, but it's a totally different experience.
It is so cool to watch how it's progressing.
Yeah.
All the new foods coming out.
Yeah.
New forms of activism, new documentaries.
Yeah. Actually, we just found out today that Burger King in Australia, which is called Hungry Jack's there, they've just released a vegan cheeseburger.
I saw
And
that.
I mean, that's just...
Vegan patty, vegan cheese, vegan mayo.
Yeah.
Boom.
What more can you ask for, right? Like,
That's it.
I mean, there are 4 main reasons why we still eat animal products today, and that is taste, convenience, tradition, and habit. Well, it just takes care of the convenience one, knocks that straight out by having, a corporation like Burger King bring out a vegan option.
Super easy.
Yeah, whenever I talk to people, that's the 4 things you just mentioned. That's totally it. I mean, if you can give people the option, like say, look, any fast food restaurant you go to, there's delicious vegan options. Any supermarket you go to, there's affordable, cheap, delicious vegan options. Like, the more available those things are, the easier our job becomes. Because if we're telling people the importance of going vegan, but they don't have options to eat that are delicious, accessible, affordable, you're only going to get so far. But yeah, I think it's really great to see how it's all progressing. It's
Definitely.
It's very exciting, and they do feed each other, right? The activism and the companies who are putting this stuff out there, they benefit each other.
Guaranteed,
right?
because the activism is creating new vegans amongst the general public. And then those vegans go on to become activists themselves and create other vegans and vegan activists. And so, yeah, you're 100%. And then that drives up the sales, the demand, and then in comes the supply. And that's
exactly.
it. Simple supply and demand.
Exactly.
We've got all the answers to change the world, don't we?
Well, as vegan activist Philip Wallen from Australia says, veganism is like the Swiss Army knife for a lot of the world's problems. It solves
For
our
sure.
ethical problems, our health problems, our environmental problems.
Yeah.
For sure. I could talk to you guys forever.
And us, you.
It would be cool. I'd like to go deeper on some of the different form of activism, like DXC and the Save movement and all that. Maybe we have to save that for another day. But
You sure?
Totally up
You got
to
us
you.
now? You got us
Yeah.
here?
how much? What are we at now? You know what? Let's talk about it a bit at
Let's
least.
go.
So, DXC.
You start with you bring out the big guns.
DXC. Let's talk about DXC. Direct action everywhere. Some people will be familiar with it. Maybe some people aren't. You guys talked about it a little bit. Well, when you gave your vegan activism workshop here, you talked about basically Anonymous for the Voiceless, DXC, and the Save movement. And DXC being the most controversial, I'm becoming more persuaded about the sort of effectiveness of these things, these demonstrations. I mean, if you had asked me a couple months ago, I probably would have said, I don't really think that that's effective. I don't think that, I think you're being too confrontational. It's too aggressive. It's too militant. Like, these are the words that people would use to describe this kind of activism. I believe that you guys sort of shared that thinking at one point.
We did.
But you've now sort of changed your view on that a little bit. So could you talk about why is this an effective form of activism, or why can it potentially be effective? And are you still comfortable? Are you comfortable doing that, or how do you feel about DXC?
We upped our militant game.
You upped your militant game. Yeah, can't you just do yoga videos and smoothie videos? Like, why are you doing this other stuff?
Wow.
Because it's effective and it works.
It's needed.
It's needed. So you're right. We shared the same thinking around direct action everywhere that you have spoken about, where we were very hesitant. We were thinking, in actual fact, is this actually counterproductive to veganism and the vegan movement? But it was simply because we were coming from a place of not understanding the purpose and intention of direct action, and we needed to educate ourselves, just as a not yet vegan needs to educate themselves about why they need to go vegan, and education is the only thing keeping them between their current not yet vegan selves and going vegan. Same thing with our understanding of direct action. So we watched a incredible YouTube video by one of the co-founders of Direct Action Everywhere, Wayne Shung. It's called The Science of Social Change. Highly recommend that all your listeners check it out. This is the video that did it for us. And basically, the mechanisms for creating individual change are different to those required to create social change. So at an Anonymous for the Voiceless Cube of Truth, we're focused on creating individual change. Direct Action Everywhere is not focused on creating individual change. It's focused on creating social change. And at the moment, we have this social norm of eating animals, that it's totally normal in society to eat animals. So Direct Action seeks to disrupt the social norm of eating animals. That is to bring attention to the fact that, hey, guys, this is what we have collectively decided is normal as a society, but it's actually really, really wrong. And we're going to force you to think about it for perhaps the first time ever. Because why would you think about something that's been socially normalized? You probably wouldn't. That's why when we sit down to meat, dairy, and eggs and eat them robotically, because we've been conditioned since birth to believe that they're normal, natural, and necessary. So the best example of the use of non-violent direct action actually came out of the civil rights movement in the 60s. And in the activism workshop, Jason, you'd recall, we talk about the Greensboro Four.
Right.
And do we got time to go into it or not really?
Just summarize.
Basically, so it wasn't enough during the civil rights movement for people just to be not participating in racism in order for civil rights to be won. Okay. It actually took people taking action to bring mass media attention to civil rights as an issue at all, because everyone just thought, oh, well, this is the way it's always been and always will be, because it was considered socially normal to segregate black people from white people. But it took black people taking action in order to bring about this social change and to bring about civil rights. And that's why veganism in and of itself is not enough.
Yeah, and the action that they took was civil disobedience. What they did was illegal. They did a sit-in. So it was 4 black guys sat at a white lunch counter. So they broke the law, but they were peaceful about it. They just sat there. They just sat where they weren't supposed to. And there was uproar. And the black waitress serving them, she actually said, and I'm probably going to get this wrong in terms of a quote, but something like, fellas like you make the rest of us look bad, right? So even it caused controversy within their own community. And we see that today where we have vegans saying, you know, you vegans doing direct action, it's too controversial, you're making us all look bad, it's too militant, you're too angry, you're too this, it's reflecting poorly on all of us, it's sending the movement back. And that's the way we used to think as well.
Well, there's tons of people who feel that way.
Yeah, absolutely.
Except that act of civil disobedience inspired a trickle of copycat actions. And so one act that those 4 men did, 100,000 people across America ended up doing sit-ins. And it went across all major newspapers on the front page. You know, civil rights was on the front page. And so that meant that everyone was talking about it when previously it was just accepted as the social norm and the way things are and always will be. And so it took those acts of civil disobedience being repeated by enough people to break down that social norm and get people talking about civil rights and then ultimately achieve civil rights.
I think basically the whole intention is to do something that's so shocking, that's so out of the norm that it gets people's attention, it gets media attention, it forces people to have a conversation, to take a side. It doesn't matter which side they take. It doesn't matter if they say those extreme, angry, freak vegans ruined my day. That's fine. They have thought about the issue of animal rights and they've taken a side. And that's the first seed planted. We are forcing people to reconsider what has been normalized. It's not normal, it's just been normalized. So that's all we're trying to do. Put the issue on the table and force people to confront it.
There are people who use militant vegans or extreme vegans as almost a reason for them to not go vegan.
Yep.
They'll say, oh, I don't have any problem with vegans or promoting veganism, but it's those militant vegans who just really upset me.
It's the ones that do more than post about smoothie bowls.
Yeah.
How dare they talk about injustice?
Yeah.
How dare they talk about the mass murder of innocent beings? That's going to ruin my day.
Yeah.
Just show me the smoothie bowls and tell me I've got a choice and it's really up to me and I can just be a Chigan or, you know, I can just kind of Oh, you got me started now, Jason.
But do you think though that it is holding certain people back, or is that just an excuse they're using?
Those people are going to be held back no matter what. They don't want to do it, and they will just clutch at any darn excuse they can.
And we've seen that on YouTube, haven't we? Where we make a
times.
response video for a non-vegan YouTuber, say someone who says that they can love animals and still eat them. And we'll point out the flaws in their thinking, and they will say, oh, you were too aggressive in your response. You know, I couldn't accept the message. It would be better if you had approached it this way. Then another vegan will come along and approach it exactly the way that they asked for it to be put to them, and they still won't go vegan.
No, it's my choice. You know, that's your opinion. I'm happy that you're vegan, but you can't make me be vegan. It goes on and on and on. And it's like nothing you ever going to say is going to convince those people. They don't want to do it, full stop. And so don't worry about the outcome. This is the other thing with direct action. We're not concerned about how it's received. We just want attention. We want the truth out there, right? So whether someone's going to agree with you or disagree with you doesn't matter. It's that they've heard it and they've been forced to confront the issue. Mm-hmm. That's it.
Because previously they weren't even aware it was an issue, because it's what we've always done.
So just speak the truth. Just say what needs to be said. Speak from the heart. Speak for animals the way you would want someone to be speaking up and defending your life. And don't worry, the chips are going to fall wherever the chips are going to fall, as we say in Australia. Plant the seeds, whether they sprout, how they sprout, that's not your business. They'll sprout later on.
And we can give a great example here, just to get some real life perspective here. 10,000 people or thereabouts marched at the official Animal Rights March in London in August this year, which we attended on August 26. We Google searched media articles in mainstream media in the days after the march for their reports on the march. Didn't register a blip on the radar. Nothing, absolutely nothing. So 10,000 vegans take to the streets, nothing. Then in Melbourne, there was a direct action everywhere disruption involving how many activists?
Are you talking about the ones in Adelaide on the rooftop? Let's use that one.
We'll use the one in Adelaide. Yeah. Okay.
So in Adelaide recently, a couple of weeks ago, there was a disruption at a slaughterhouse, Adelaide, Australia.
Strathalbyn Abattoir.
23 people. 23, no zeros. On a rooftop of a slaughterhouse for 17 hours.
Yes, that's right.
With 3 giant banners printed out from the Dominion movement. Media attention, live media reports from the scene. Police, just the coverage was extraordinary. They negotiated the rescue, the release of one of the individuals, a sheep from the slaughterhouse. The slaughterhouse was shut down for the day, and it was on all media.
Do you know how the media found out about that? Because usually slaughterhouses are not just like in the middle of cities. I mean,
the activists have contacts with media. Australia is a wonderful, wonderful example that is really leading the way in how to do successful direct action, how to really get on the news. And so they have now, activists have contacts with journalists who have given them their card and say, well, when you guys are doing something like that again, call us. Now, what's the difference? Here's what happened, Jason. 10,000 happy, peaceful protesters going through the streets. Where's the story? Mm-hmm. No laws are being broken. You're allowed to do that. You're allowed to do it. It's legal. Yeah. You're being escorted by the police. The streets have been closed off and opened up. Your path's all clear.
And it doesn't fit the mainstream media's narrative as depicting vegans as violent, militant, aggressive extremists, does it? If they haven't done anything wrong, if they haven't broken any laws, if they aren't doing any civil disobedience. Right.
Now, if one of those vegans out of the 10,000 threw a brick through McDonald's, hey, that would have made the news. But then that's not non-violent. That's violent action, and that's not what we're advocating. But then in Australia, you have the example of only 23 people.
Mm-hmm. They were still engaged in non-violent direct action. There was nothing violent about their actions, but it was the fact that it was illegal.
And it's a story, right?
It's a story. It's civil disobedience. Yeah. And so this is what we're saying. You don't need, hey, don't get me wrong. I'd love 10,000 people at each action, but you don't even need those numbers. You just need a small group doing, the right thing / the wrong thing.
Yeah, right? And something that's going to create a story.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So I feel like the Margaret Mead quote, never forget that a small group of thoughtful, committed citizens can change the world. Indeed, it is the only thing that ever has. I feel like that's almost like the non-violent direct action mantra.
Yeah, and this is just one example. We have several examples of where this has happened in Australia. They're all direct action. We have people going into steakhouses and taking direct action and chanting, it's not food, it's violence, holding up signs, totally disrupting this place of murdered animals being eaten.
And making the 6 p.m. evening news on all 3 mainstream media channels.
In fact, one of the leaders was of that movement, of that disruption, was interviewed on a very popular show. It's not a news show. It's
where they talk about news stories after the news.
Yeah.
One of those type of shows.
It was a popular show, right? Mainstream coverage. And so we're getting on the news all the time. We've had a disruption called Meet the Victims. We've had number 1 and number 2, one in Brisbane, the other one in Melbourne or Queensland and Victoria. And they will be continued in the future. Again, they're all over the news. And you're talking about, 100 people gathering. So 10,000 versus 23 or 100.
Yeah. And
the outcome is chalk and vegan cheese.
Well, it's like when you talk about outreach conversations, you can have the outreach conversations. You could go just have that one conversation or make a video, get it spread online. Yeah. When you're talking about direct action, you want to do things that are going to make the news, because you can go to a restaurant and you can do whatever and get, affect those people at the restaurant. But if you can make the news and you get everybody talking about it at their dinner table, that's the whole point, right? Is to get people talking.
Exactly.
So doing things that are,
exactly
extraordinary.
And I'll give you an example of that. One of the disruptions that I just mentioned, where the activists went to a steakhouse,
Mm-hmm.
because it made the mainstream and made this talk show that we were talking about. Not too long after that, we were in Brisbane, Australia, and we did a disruption. And
it was in a food court.
Yes, it was in a food court, not in a closed restaurant. It was in an open area. We were coming up the escalator. Luca and I were filming for a video. It actually is up on the channel. And we had just started. So it was a silent disruption where people had black tape over their mouth, holding up graphic signs. And just as we were coming up the escalator, I switched on the camera. We were ready to go. And there was an elderly couple standing close by. And I heard them say, within the first 10 seconds of this action, I heard them say, "Oh, they're those horrible people." And my stomach...
That we've seen on the news.
Exactly. My first reaction, my stomach dropped I don't want to be one of those horrible people. I don't want them to see us like that. Vegans are awesome. We want to be lovely. Come on, And then my second reaction was, holy macaroni, they know us. Mm-hmm. They know what this is about. They've seen it. And that's all that matters. They saw it. They know what we're here for. Wow.
And they were forced to talk about it, think about it, and decide on which side of the issue they stood. And at some point there will be a reckoning. People will either be standing on the right side or the wrong side of history. So it's forcing people to make them aware that there is a side to choose.
Are we the horrible people who are holding up posters of tortured, dismembered, slaughtered animals? Or
the ones paying for it?
Exactly.
It's still very early days, I think. I mean, people have been doing activism for animal rights for a long time, but it's really starting to gain some momentum, and it's going to be really interesting to see how this all evolves, because it's very early days still, and people are, maybe they're not even, well, they're probably taking a side, but I think as the years go on and as people have more time to think about this, and as this issue is made more in the the forefront of what's being covered on the news and what people are talking about, there's going to be more and more people who are paying attention to, well, are these people really so bad if they're just trying to help these animals? Yeah. So it's going to be, I think it's very interesting to see what's going to happen next, and what kind of disruptions are going to be happening, and the conversations around that.
And again, it's the power of social media. As you said, this has been going on for a long time, but it's only really heating up and exploding right now because of social media, because we can spread this so quickly. We can reach people everywhere instantly, and we don't need governments. We don't need industry. We don't even need the mainstream media technically. Mm-hmm. We are controlling the social media. Yeah, that is at our fingertips, and it's power to the people. As cliche as that sounds, it really is.
To reach people, but also for people to get involved. Yeah. Like to get the people involved in doing these things and spreading the message.
Exactly.
Back, a few years, 10 years ago, anybody who wants to find this message and find this cause to do something about it, you really have to do some digging, and you have to be lucky basically to find a group that's doing something like this. Yeah. Now you want to be a vegan activist, like it's
super easy.
And that's why what we're seeing is there used to be a lot longer of a time gap between someone going vegan and then becoming an active vegan than there is today, and that's because of social media. So often in our UK and US activism tours, we would come across vegans who have only been vegan this year but have already been involved in activism. Like, it only took them a month or 2 months or 3 months to go from going vegan to getting active.
Yeah, and you know, we've been talking about the fact that not only do we have to make veganism normal and mainstream, we also have to make the idea of being a vegan activist normal and mainstream.
Yeah.
You know, I think we have to normalize for vegans that this is the next step. As we always say, going vegan is not the most we can do. It's the least we can do. You know, the next step is to become active. And as soon as we can start normalizing that for vegans, that it's not this big, scary, terrible thing of I'm going to be, you know, dressed in black with a mask on in a factory farm, running out with a chicken under my arm. That's not necessarily what you have to do, but just starting to advocate in some way and taking it from there is super important.
And if I could just tack on to that, a thought that you shared with me just very recently, and we're still formulating how we're going to articulate it, but essentially...
you're going to say it now?
Yeah, I'm going to say it now.
Oh.
We should do it.
This may be a bacon moment. Remember our safety word?
Yeah, it could be.
Okay.
It could be. So during the time of human slavery, it wasn't enough for people simply to not partake in human slavery themselves in order to achieve the abolition of human slavery. It took abolitionists taking action to bring about the end of human slavery.
It was also not enough for just women to be women and want equal rights. We had to become active and create those rights, fight for those rights. So what we're saying is
it wasn't enough for people of color to simply just be people of color and for white people to not participate in racism themselves in order to bring about civil rights. It took civil rights activists to bring about those civil rights.
Same thing for the gay movement. You know, it's not enough for people just to be gay and just live their life the way they want. It took activists pushing for those rights. Same thing with veganism. It's not enough for us just to be vegan and live vegan. That's not going to create the vegan world that we want.
Animal rights will only be brought about through action taken by animal rights activists. So
Hope that makes sense and it came out okay.
I think that makes total sense.
Yeah.
It makes total sense. And
because that's what a lot of vegans say. Well, I'm vegan. I'm doing my part. You know, I'm not participating in any of the cruelty anymore.
Yeah.
So that's my bit.
But again, every vegan could relate to this, I'm sure. If you saw somebody needlessly beating a dog, it wouldn't be enough for you just not to participate in beating the dog yourself. You would actually take some action to try to intervene to stop whoever was beating the dog from needlessly beating the dog, yeah?
for sure.
As soon as we change it from a dog to a cow or a pig or a chicken or a duck or a turkey or a sheep or a fish, you know, all of a sudden, we don't need to be active. It's just enough to not eat them and not participate in the violence towards them. Well, that's not morally consistent.
And we see these comments, Jason, all the time. I mean, every day we see these comments on the channel with people saying, you know, I've been, you know, vegan for 11 years, but I don't talk about it. You know, I'm not one of those pushy vegans. I just let people be.
Right, as though it's a good thing, right? Not to be that pushy vegan, right?
I've never ever seen someone protesting against the Yulin Dog Festival in China as being labelled pushy, militant, or extremist.
Mm-hmm, for sure.
Or if you're fighting for human rights, are you pushy, militant, and extremist?
Mm-hmm.
You know, replace the victim, and all of a sudden.
So we should wrap it up, but give us some words for somebody who is vegan, but is hesitant to get active. I mean, you've given so many reasons to get active, but somebody who's, let's say they're, you know, I think a lot of people are just maybe lacking that confidence, or for whatever reason, they're just uncomfortable with the idea of getting active. So how can somebody maybe overcome some of those feelings? Like, what's a good way for them to sort of, you know, start dipping their toes in activism?
You're going to quote Winnie the Pooh.
I'm going to quote Winnie the Pooh. As we
I love you guys are so connected. Anybody who watches your videos, if you guys haven't seen their videos, you just got it's like they're on the same wavelength. That's for sure.
20 years. It's going to do it to you.
You're braver than you believe, stronger than you seem, and smarter than you think. So back yourself. And also, you know how every vegan ever says, going vegan was the best thing I ever did. I only wish I'd done it sooner. Well, every active vegan will tell you becoming a vegan activist was the best thing they ever did, and they only wish they'd done it sooner.
For sure.
It is incredibly empowering. And this is, I think, what a lot of people miss. They think that when they will become active, that it's this big, scary thing that they're not going to be able to handle. I'm going to be too emotional. I'll be too sad. I'll be depressed. I can't go to a vigil. I can't see trucks coming in carrying animals to their murder. I'm not strong enough for that. What they don't realize is that it's empowering. It helps you deal with things. And I know it sounds like, how is that even possible? But the thing is, when you start to intervene, when you start to take action, when you start to document this injustice and you start sharing it and you start talking to people and you start being active in how you communicate this message to others and you're doing something more than just not participating in it yourself.
You're really being part of the solution.
Exactly. There's a massive difference. And it's sort of like short-term pain, long-term gain. So yeah, you might feel really down initially like, oh, wow, what have I just witnessed? But then there's this fire that's lit within you and there's this empowering feeling of, wow, I did something today. Not only didn't I put these animals on my plate or on my body or in with these products, but I went out and I helped them next level and I helped others. I helped to educate others. That means I'm doing something about it. I'm part of that solution. And that is a massive help. It helps to balance out all of the negativity and the feeling of dread and despair that we often burden as vegans. So you're going to grow a lot. You're going to feel better long term. And we've got to remember it ain't about us. We're not doing this because we like it, because we want to, because we've got nothing better to do with our time. We're doing it because it's needed. It's the right thing to do. And it's the only thing to do if we're going to end this Holocaust.
And if we were in the victim's position, that's all we ever have to think about. What if we were in the victim's position?
Going vegan is not the most we can do.
It's the least we can do.
It's awesome talking to you guys. You guys are legends. You guys work so hard. I can really, see your passion and your fire in all your work. And you guys are just nonstop putting out great content, getting out there, supporting local activism. Just from the bottom of my heart, thank you guys so much for all the work you guys do.
Thank you, Jason.
Thank you, Jason. And thank you for being the organizer of the Anonymous for the Voiceless Cube of Truth here in Chiang Mai and getting that off the ground and keeping it running every fortnight. It's very important presence here in Chiang Mai, and thank you for taking the initiative.
Yeah, absolutely.
My pleasure. My pleasure.
And for having us on the show today.
Yeah, thank you. This was fun.
And for co-organising our activism workshop here in Chiang Mai and the screening of Dominion here this weekend. So
my pleasure. Yeah, we'll try to get this podcast going off the ground. It's going to be early days right now, but I'm excited for it, and it gives me a real it's like we were talking at dinner the other day, and we got talking and we knew we were going to do a podcast, and then we said, well, we should stop talking because we should be talking about this on the podcast. So that's the idea here too, is right. Talking with I'm friends with a lot of people who are, doing great things in the vegan movement. And I just feel like, these conversations that I have with them, they need to be shared, get it out there. It's all
absolutely
a recurring theme today, right? Of reaching as many people as possible whenever we're doing something that's of value, right?
We all have a role to play, and I think you found a very important role for yourself. So
I hope so.
Yeah.
I hope so. I love doing it. I love talking to people like yourselves. So
and us, you. Thanks, mate.
Thank you.
Thanks for coming on today, you guys. We'll see you guys soon.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Those two make quite the team, don't they? I really think we're lucky to have them working so hard to spread the vegan message. I'm definitely feeling inspired to do more after that conversation, and I hope you feel the same. You can find out more about Natasha and Luca by visiting their website, thatvegancouple.com, where you'll find links to their various social media platforms, as well as their podcast, ebooks, and all kinds of other cool stuff. If you enjoyed this episode of the Vegan Champion podcast, it would be awesome if you could support the show by doing one, some, or all of the following things. The first thing is to tell people about it. Share your favorite episode with a friend, family member, or colleague. The second thing is to subscribe to the podcast on iTunes or Apple Podcasts or wherever you listen, and subscribe on YouTube, as you can watch video versions of the conversations there. And the fourth thing is, if you feel inclined to support financially, you can support me through Patreon at patreon.com/JasonFonger. If you have a vegan-friendly business and would like to sponsor an episode of the show, please reach out to me at theveganchampionpodcast@gmail.com. If you want to learn more about me and keep up to date with what I'm doing, check out my website at jasonfonger.com. You'll find all of my social media links there too. And if you would like to contact me, you can do so by sending an email to jasonfongerinfo@gmail.com. That's all for this episode. Hope you have enjoyed, everybody. Take care of yourselves, everyone, and I'll see you in the next episode. This episode of the Vegan Champion Podcast, once again brought to you by Matthew Chalmers. Check him out on Instagram at MattChalMusic. Further video and audio production by Tarmo Vanis. Check him out at tarmovanis.com.